Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to chat at you about what I've been reading recently. Apologies for the kind of frizzy all over the place hair, but it's raining out and it didn't seem worth it to straighten it today. So far, 2018 has been another kind of slow reading year, though I'm not really stressing out about it because of how I set my Goodreads reading goal. I'm already like 3 books in, and so I'm technically ahead of schedule, so go me. But also I've really just been focusing on reading what I'm craving, which in this case has been a lot of nonfiction. For some reason I have not completed a single work of fiction so far this year, which is kind of shocking given that it is the middle of March already, but I've just been really gravitating towards nonfiction lately. So what I have to show you here are 2 nonfiction books that I have recently finished, and then the 2 nonfiction books that I'm currently in the middle of. The first book I finished recently was I Am Malala, the Girl Who Stood Up for Education and Was Shot by the Taliban by Malala Yousafzai. Now I've mentioned this one in several videos and I honestly don't have a ton more to say about it than what I've already said, so I will keep this brief. One of my favorite things about this memoir was that it really does come across as just a young girl telling us her life story, and I really appreciate how well she kind of situates herself in Pakistani culture and history. I found that very helpful, but I really appreciated that it really sounds like a young woman, because I find that sometimes when you read memoirs that are by people who are not professional writers, done in collaboration with another writer or a journalist, sometimes they can read a bit too sterilized, or like somebody's gone in and really edited what they had to say, and that's very much not the case in this book. And as kind of a side note, I just wanted to mention that I will no longer be sharing my star ratings for books in videos, simply because I don't really think it's that helpful of a metric for you guys. I would much rather just lay out my thoughts about the book and then say whether I would recommend it or not. I think that'll be way more helpful. I will still continue to star rate books on Goodreads, simply because that's how Goodreads works, and I think for more personal tracking, I think star rating works great, but I just don't really feel like it provides you guys any helpful information, so I'm just gonna not include those in my videos anymore. So what I would say about Malala is that I would definitely recommend this if you're interested in feminism, particularly international feminism, like feminism outside of a Western context. And I would also really just recommend this if you have heard of Malala, if you've listened to any of her speeches and you're just curious about the history behind the girl. I think you'll really enjoy this. The other nonfiction read that I completed recently was Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff, and yes, it's that Fire and Fury. Basically, I started listening to this as an audiobook midway through January because it was popping up on the news all the time. I felt like all of the late night hosts were talking about it, and I thought, you know what, if I'm gonna have to hear about this book over and over and over again, I at least want to go to the source so I can form my own opinion. Going into the book, I knew nothing about Michael Wolff, the author, and I still don't really. I know he's a journalist. I know some people have found some of his work controversial in the past, and I would say that after reading this, I can understand why. I just realized I'm not providing much context, but in case you don't know, Fire and Fury is supposedly Michael Wolff's book exposing the Trump White House based on what he observed within the first, I think, 100 days after Trump took office. Supposedly he was okayed by the president to come into the West Wing and just kind of sit there and observe, and he kind of just stopped people in the hallway and said, oh, you know, the president said it was okay for me to be here, can you give me some thoughts on what's going on? Okay, so here it is, my honest opinion on this book. If you can divorce yourself from the fact that this is based on reality, it reads like a political soap opera, and it's actually, I don't want to say entertaining because that sounds so wrong, but it is. It's kind of entertaining. There's just so much ridiculous packed into this book that there were several moments where I found myself laughing out loud, and I think the audiobook narrator really lent to that experience. He had this amazing ability to kind of keep an even voice, and then when things were getting crazier, he would reach this like level of frenetic energy, which was just absolutely great and just a perfect performance for this kind of book. My biggest problem with the book, honestly, was Michael Wolff's sourcing, because it's very, very unclear what he personally observed, what was actually told to him, what he heard third hand or second hand, and what is just conjecture. At the beginning of the book, it seemed to be slightly more clear where he was getting his information from, but by the epilogue, I was just kind of like, how do you know that? Like, why should I believe you? So I don't know, it was an interesting read to say the least. I don't regret reading it, but I will say that I picked this up with a Audible credit that I had from a return, so I would definitely not spend actual full money. I wouldn't get this at full price, basically is what I'm saying. So those were some nonfiction books I've completed recently, and then I'm in the middle of 2, so I thought I would start with the one I'm most actively reading. And that is Brotopia, Breaking Up the Boys Club of Silicon Valley by Emily Chang. Now, I mentioned this one in my anticipated releases video, so definitely check that out if you haven't seen it yet. This came out like the first week of February, I believe, and I've been reading it ever since. It is basically exactly what it says on the cover here. It's a look at the history of Silicon Valley, it's a look at the history of sexism and sexual harassment, and while I haven't gotten to the sexual harassment stuff yet, it's been really interesting to see just kind of how Silicon Valley was set up from the get-go to not necessarily exclude women, but to not appeal to or bring in women. I have to say I was slightly concerned that because you know, Silicon Valley is a huge topic, and because she covers so many different companies, that it was going to be a bit of a dense read, but it's really not. It reads, it's very readable, it's very easy to get through, and while I do feel like I need to keep a little notepad next to me and write down all the names because I'm not so great with names, I'm finding it incredibly interesting. It is slightly depressing because I feel like a lot of the companies in here, or actually all of the companies so far that I've read about, are companies I currently support either with my usage or my dollars or both. It's very eye-opening, I will just say that. And then the other nonfiction read I'm currently in the middle of is Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris, and this is his follow-up to 10% Happier, which I read and absolutely loved in January. Whereas 10% Happier was more of a memoir, this is definitely a self-help book, though it is kind of mixed with a memoir-like narrative because it's basically structured to follow different stops on a trip that Dan Harris and Jeff Warren made on this kind of meditation bus tour thing that they decided to do. It's definitely written with the same kind of dry, sarcastic humor that Dan Harris used in 10% Happier, so I'm really enjoying that so far. And I think it's fun because sometimes when he gets into a concept of meditation that he thinks Jeff will explain better, he kind of butts in, like, so there's almost like a break in the narrative and then Jeff comes in a different font, so it very much feels like a very fun, casual, kind of sarcastic self-help book, and for me that's like, I really enjoy that. Aside from the more narrative structure, they also include written out instructions for different kinds of meditations or different guided meditations, so you can read through this first and then try and practice it on your own. You can also use this in addition to the 10% Happier app, which I've been doing. They have a Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics meditation course in the app. So if you buy the book, you can actually get that course for free. So yeah, check it out if you haven't yet. And I'm kind of just dipping in and out of this one, but I'm really enjoying it. So that's what I've been reading recently. And again, it's been a bit of a slow start to the year, but I don't really mind because I'm really just kind of going by mood and craving this year. I'm not really sure how I'm going to title this video yet, whether it's going to be like books 2 through 3 or whether I'm just gonna say it's a recent reads video or what, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I would actually love to know any nonfiction reads you guys have enjoyed so far in 2018. And with that, I'm gonna wrap it up, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye!